and welcome back to the Diabesties channel. Jazz over here, and we are back with another episode of Type 1 Talks. So, what are Type 1 Talks? They're basically these fun, just sit down chats between you and me where I explain you a little bit about what it is and also share some of my personal experiences, some tips and tricks of what I've learned as a Type 1 diabetic. And today's Type 1 Talks is all about hyperglycemias. And what hyperglycemias, they are the opposite of hypoglycemia, but obviously, and we did our first Type 1 talk on hypoglycemia. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I'll put a link in the description box below. So go ahead and check that out for sure. Now, hyperglycemia. Before I get into what hyperglycemia is, I'm going to put on my Grey's Anatomy Dr. Meredith Grey lab coat and explain to you a little bit about the physiological part of what happens when we eat.
Dr. Gray, you've got a fever, high white count, and tenderness over McBurney's point, which suggests
appendicitis.
So when we eat food, our body breaks down the carbs, what we eat, into different sugar molecules. Now stay with me, okay? So our body breaks down carbs into different sugar molecules. One of them is glucose. And glucose is one of the reasons why we have energy, right? It gives our body energy. Glucose walks into the bloodstream and it gets immediately absorbed into the bloodstream. But the glucose, so it's floating around in the bloodstream, it's swimming in the bloodstream and it's having its fun. But it cannot enter the cells in the tissues without getting broken down further. And what breaks it down further is insulin, right? That magical potion which we don't have, insulin. Now, because we're type 1 diabetic, we do not produce insulin. So the glucose which gets broken down from the carbs is still swimming in the bloodstream. And there's no way of it going into the cells. So it's swimming, then more glucose comes, it's swimming, more glucose, and it looks like one of those Chinese pools, you know. So it's just like so much sugar and glucose in the bloodstream, and that is why your sugar rises. So hyperglycemia is when you have high blood sugar. Right? So all those little glucoses are really having like Olympic races in your bloodstream. So hyperglycemia is defined, most doctors define it as anything above 200 milligrams per deciliter. Normal blood sugar range of a non-diabetic would be somewhere between maybe I want to say 90 to 120, maybe 80 to 130. But anything above 180 or 200, 250, and it just goes into hyperglycemia. So the most common reason of why you get hyperglycemia is, of course, because there's not enough insulin in your body. So as a type 1 diabetic, what can happen is you're normally taking insulin, but sometimes a food choice, right? So if you have something with really high carb or really high sugar, it can raise your blood sugar to more than 200, or if you've not bolused enough for it. Another reason is also, you'll think I'm kidding, but stress. And out of personal experience, I can tell you that stress is one of the reasons your sugar can go way, way high and lead to hyperglycemia. Another one is also infection or illness. So if your body is battling some kind of other illness, your sugar could rise as well. Another reason is less physical activity as well, right? Because when you're doing some physical activity, your body is burning glucose. So see, these are some of the reasons why your sugar can be above 200 and have hyperglycemia. How do you treat it? Most of the time, it is as simple as injecting insulin. Of course, if there are severe complications, there are other things to do. So what are the symptoms of hyperglycemia? Thirst. Oh my goodness, I cannot stress on this enough. But feeling thirsty is one of the immediate symptoms of a hyper. Now, this is not the thirst you feel like after you climb a flight of stairs, or like if you've done some kind of an exercise and you feel thirsty. This thirst is like that thirst into a billion. Like I cannot explain, but it is like you've been in a desert for years and you've not had water for even more years, and it's this like quenching thirst that no amount of water can sort of fulfill, so the satisfaction you normally get by having some water, in this kind of an hyper thirst, you don't get that satisfaction. So it's like you're dying of thirst, and it's just, thirst, biggest symptom of hyperglycemia. The second symptom, which is a direct correlation to that, hold on, there's something in my eye. Time, please. Is it gone? There's something in my eye. Is it gone? Is it gone? The second symptom, which is a direct correlation of the first symptom, is that because you're drinking so much water, you are peeing all the freaking time. You are just peeing and peeing and peeing. So this is a way of your body sort of getting rid of all that excess glucose, is by sort of flushing it out in urine. So you're drinking water, you're going to the bathroom. You're drinking water, you're going to the bathroom. That's what happens all day. Another symptom of hyperglycemia is blurred vision, and also some kind of nausea, and even some kind of fatigue and headache. So it's very important that when you check your blood sugar, and if it's above 200, 250, you treat the symptoms of a hyperglycemia. Because if you don't, this gets into the next part of this video, and that is an untreated hyperglycemia leads to DKA. And earlier, I used to think the full form of DKA was don't know anything, because it felt like that. But no, so the full form of DKA is diabetic ketoacidosis.
What?
What happens is, when the glucose is in your bloodstream for too long and it's not treated with insulin, it sort of starts forming toxic acids, and these sort of form ketone bodies, and ketones are lethal. So untreated hyperglycemia leads to diabetic ketoacidosis because ketones form in your body. This is a potentially life-threatening situation. And most often you'll find that DKA happens to people when they've just been diagnosed with diabetes, right? Because you don't know you've got diabetes, you don't know your body's not producing insulin. So you enter the hospital with DKA. That's what happened to me. But in other cases, because of other complications, or because of maybe less insulin going into your body or no insulin going to your body, you could develop DKA. And these symptoms are like hyper into 20, right? So nausea, vomiting, shortness of breath, severe headache, fatigue, fruity smelling breath and urine. And I'm not joking here. Your urine smells really sweet. And no, I'm not going and sniffing my urine, but it's just this very distinctive smell of your urine. It's sweet and it's really disgusting. But fruity smelling breath also, because there's just so much sugar in your body, I guess. I mean, I don't know the reason, but I'm presuming. In very, very severe cases, coma, and in severe cases, death. It's not a fun condition to have, for sure. It's really severe, and if you have any of those symptoms, you need to call your doctor, call the emergency services, go to a hospital. So now coming to some of my experiences with DKA, or don't know anything, is I've experienced DKA, I think, I want to say 4 to 5 times till now. The first time was, of course, my diagnosis. I had severe DKA when I was diagnosed at 13. The other few times were because of reasons that my insulin pump failed, or I became a little insulin resistant, or some kind of a error with my treatment. So those were avoidable situations, but unfortunately they happened. But what I have over here is some of my old medical records, and it'll be fun to sort of go over them and show you the actual numbers as I tell you my stories. So the first experience of DKA what I had was when I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 13 on January 2nd, 2009. And what had happened, right, I'll tell you in very brief, is that 2 weeks before, about a month before, I want to say, no, maybe 3 weeks before, I started drinking a lot of water. That distinctive smell, what I'm talking about, as and when I started losing a lot of weight. So in 2 weeks, I lost about 7 kgs, right? I was doing one of two things. I was either drinking water or I was in the bathroom. There was no in between. And towards the end, I started developing fever. I was nauseous. I was also, because I was drinking so much water and peeing all the time, I started developing very, very severe cramps in the night. And then one day, my mother is like, you know what? You don't look too well. Let's get a blood test done. They got a blood test done and I was rushed to the hospital. And that file is right here. This is the first file I have, and I'm going to pull out some. So, the discharge summary says, a 13-year-old female patient came to the hospital on 2nd Jan with polyuria and polydysplasia since 1 week. So, polyuria, I think, is peeing too much or drinking too much water. It's one of them. I know one of them. Had lost 7 to 8 kgs in a week. Has cramps in legs and weakness, and was diagnosed as type 1 diabetes with ketoacidosis. So, normally your serum acetone, which is the ketones, right, the acetone level in your body, it should be below 9. When I was diagnosed, it was and my blood glucose, it was 1046. Crazy! I was like, what? The doctors were like, what? They were like, you should be in coma right now. Why are you walking into the emergency room? And I was just like, I don't know. That was the first time I was diagnosed, and then I was treated with like IV fluids and antibiotics and lots of insulin, and I was in the ICU for 3 days. But yeah, there's no real tip for that. It's like you're diagnosed, you gotta do what the doctors tell you. But yeah, I think yeah, one of the tips is, if you feel these symptoms, don't wait that long. Of course, we didn't know what was happening back then, but now that you know the symptoms of a DKA or of a hyper, just go to the hospital. Get some insulin in your body, right? And especially so when you get DKA, managing with injections is one thing you can do, but in severe cases like in this one, IV insulin is what gets the job done faster. The second time I got DKA was when I was 18 years old, and this happened because I think I was really sick. I had like severe fever, and I think I got like a viral infection, and I think I was not able to take enough insulin or something like that. But I remember I got DKA, and this time the acetone at that time, looking for it. The acetone at this time was 20. So serum acetone right there, it was 20. So this time I remember, I think I was just really sick for the first time. I think the tip over here is to, when you're sick, especially when you've got severe fever and stuff like that, check your sugars a lot more often, because infection can lead to higher blood sugars. And constantly check it, and if it's on a rise, you can call your doctors and get it done. The third time I got it was when I was 19, and this was very, very avoidable. I remember this time very, very clearly. And I wear the Omnipod, I wear the pump, and the pump failed in the night. I don't know why, for some reason. And the problem was I was in deep sleep and I didn't realize that the pump failed. So the entire night, I didn't have any insulin in my body. So in the morning, I woke up with a really, really high sugar, and the pump still wasn't working, and I didn't know that it wasn't working. So we went on and on the day. I was eating, I was taking my normal bolus, but nothing was going in. And then later in the day, when I got really, really thirsty and I sort of knew the symptoms of a hyper, I called up the doctor, and he was like, just come in right now, because I was getting nauseous at the time as well. And then I realized that my pump wasn't working. So what we also did this time was, there are these sticks that come. They're like, you pee on them, and they're called keto sticks. And there are these at-home tests where you can pee on the stick and it changes color, and it tells you if there are ketone bodies present. So if you're a type 1 diabetic, I strongly recommend having those keto sticks in your house, because you sort of know, right, if you're getting into ketosis. But this time when I went in, I remember a lot of cramping, and over here my acetone was 40. And my doctor is really cool because he immediately tells me that, you know what, Jazz, I think you're going into diabetic ketoacidosis. Come to the hospital, we give you IV insulin and you'll feel a lot better. And that's what happened. So yeah, a tip over here is to keep those, if you're type 1, and it's to keep those ketoacidosis at home tests, because you can, quickly just test it and call up your doctors and figure it out. But yeah, so tips again over here are to sort of really understand your body and know your body symptoms, because there's a very distinct kind of thirst that comes when your sugars are really high, and it's understandable to all the type 1s out there. For the people around the type 1s, try to sense these systems. Try to sense these symptoms and help your friend or family member out. So, like I say, live happily, bolus regularly, do not get into DKA, avoid hyperglycemias, and be type 1 of a kind. Okay. My director has a really cool idea here. Live happily, bolus regularly, and as always, be type 1 of a kind. And you're noticing that there's no heart, but hold on, look at this magic. Hi there. That was his idea, by the way. Alright, so subscribe to the channel if you like the videos, turn on the bell icon, share this video, and of course follow us on all our social media for more type 1 tricks and tips, and I will see you again in the next video.